Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for the last video of chapter 15, and I need to find a page that you can pick this up on. The topic for today's video is indoor air pollution, and you probably might be surprised to know that the chemicals that you encounter in your house every day that you're breathing in, that's wafting chemicals into your lungs that can do long-term damage. In fact, some of these chemicals have been outlawed, but yet if you have, for instance, some really old furniture, you might still have formaldehyde in that fabric. So anyway, I'm going to show you a nice diagram of a house and show you all the chemicals, and then one particular chemical that I want to spend more time on. We'll see how this goes, but I think I'd rather tell you in class about radon, because I have my own little private story about radon. Let's hit the PowerPoint. Alright, let's talk about indoor air pollutants. First of all, as is often the case, there's a very different set of issues between those people in developing countries and those of us in the developed world. This listing here is for the LEDCs, people that live in a hut. Right? They live in shanties or huts, very small little tiny places. They don't have electricity, so the only way they can heat their hut is by burning wood or burning animal manure or burning coal. So you can imagine what their indoor air pollution issues are. You can follow along, by the way, with me on page 427 in your book. So they have to worry about PMs. Obviously there's ash or soot accompanying the wood or whatever it is they're burning. They have a common worry with us when it comes to carbon monoxide. Of course, these items also release carbon dioxide into the air, but that's not a health problem for the people. That's a global climate change issue. And there are trace amounts of other chemicals as well. If they're burning coal in their house, you have to worry about sulfur dioxide and how that can accumulate inside the house. For MEDCs, the problems are more what you're used to seeing and what you've experienced in your life. Tightly insulated homes is a big problem. Now, we recommend tightly insulated homes because that decreases your energy usage, but it also cuts down on the fresh air that gets into your house. This is why people, like your parents, are always interested in opening the windows as soon as it gets warm enough to. We want to get some good fresh air in that house. Yes, there are air filters in our homes, but they do very little except catch the big dust particles, the big PMs that are in the air that you breathe. So tightly insulated homes are good for energy, but they're bad for your air quality. Anybody that sneezes, anything that gets into the air ends up circulating throughout the air. Think of it as a mini airplane. Have you ever thought about the air in the airplane? That air is just recycled. It is not fresh air added to the system. The same thing is true with large office buildings. And frequently, nowadays in MEDCs, we have more and more people that work in these large office buildings. That air is very bad. As a matter of fact, it's not uncommon for a whole floor of people to get sick because one person has a cold, sneezes, and it spreads throughout the workplace. And again, there are what we call HEPA, H-E-P-A, filters in those air handlers that cycle the air through, but the fact is they don't catch everything. Of course, in large office buildings, especially the old ones, we have to worry about asbestos, and that is very dangerous to breathe in. Causes mesothelioma, also known as asbestosis, and that hardens your tiny little alveoli just like tar does when you smoke cigarettes. So every breath you take, damage is done to the alveoli, and that damage cannot be undone. Carbon monoxide, we've already talked about how that can harm you and maybe even kill you if you breathe that in. We have not talked yet about radon, and radon is a story that I want to tell you in class tomorrow. So remind me to tell you the story about radon. Radon is a naturally occurring radioactive element that's found in some rocks. It becomes an indoor air pollutant when that radon seeps into usually basements, because basements are built underground. So developers have actually cut away the rock and the stone to build the house and has released radon. Now if your basement is completely airtight, the radon won't come in, but there's usually some sort of little crack or something in the foundation of the house and radon can seep in. Radon is not a problem in places like here in Florida without a basement, or without these rock formations that I'm talking about. And I'll tell you a story in Maryland tomorrow. Can you remember what a VOC is? Volatile organic compounds. And we still use a lot of these compounds in our home products. For instance, in dry cleaning. If you have your clothes dry cleaned a lot and that sits in your closet, and you happen to spend a lot of time in your closet, then you're going to have problems breathing. You're going to be exposing yourself to VOCs. This diagram is in your book, and it shows you what some of those VOCs might be. First of all, there are pesticides, paints, cleaning fluids. These all have VOCs in them, and those chemicals are being emitted at all times. So if you happen to use one of these products in your home, you are subjecting yourself to breathing in VOCs. Fireplaces and wood stoves, particulate matter. So if you have one of those, you need to use them judiciously. Of course, there are some people up north that this is the way they heat their home. It might be in the basement, or it might be in the living space, and even though it's got an exhaust that goes out, the particulate matter can build up. If you have gas stoves or gas furnaces, car left running in the garage, you run the risk of carbon monoxide. Here is those rocks I was telling you about, rocks and soil that have radon in them. More on radon later. Floor and ceiling tiles, pipe insulation in older homes might have asbestos in them. Old paint might have lead in them. Here's the one that you don't think much about, but this is still commonplace. Furniture that's mass-produced especially. Carpets, foam insulation, pressed wood, all have VOCs in them. I hazard a guess that if we were to go to your house, you would test positive for the emission of some VOCs in some room of your home, probably because of the furniture or the carpets. And the number one, most important indoor air pollutant is smoke, secondhand smoke. We know carcinogenic compounds are released when somebody lights up a cigarette. And so this is not a guess any longer. This is a for real. Secondhand smoke can kill. So there you have your indoor air pollutants. Don't mean to scare you too much, but hey, a lot of these chemicals are being emitted in your home right now. I told you I'd talk about radon later. Alright, so why do we care about these things? Damage to mucous membranes is a big problem. If you have experienced your inner tissue of your nose seems to be dried out all the time, chances are you're breathing some of these things in. Of course, that can lead to respiratory diseases. But in addition, air pollutants damage other living things like plant leaves and roots. Remember what I've been saying. Plants don't do a very good job dealing with these types of chemicals. They are a big problem for organisms that are more delicate than we are. And there's a reduction in primary productivity, and things can break down and deteriorate in your home or outside. Doesn't really matter. This is air pollution on all living things. I wanted to show you this one last diagram, and here are the prevention things that we can do, and then also cleaning up. If you can't prevent it from happening, you can at least clean up or dilute. So, cover ceiling tiles. Ban smoking. Obviously, that's a big one. All around the United States now we're banning smoking. And if you're still a smoker, you ought to at least go outside when you smoke. Stricter formaldehyde rules when it comes to carpets and furniture. Right now, there is a certain amount of formaldehyde that's allowed to be in these carpets and furniture. You know, we don't use formaldehyde to preserve specimens anymore because we know the dangers of formaldehyde. Scientists have developed lung problems over the years because they constantly worked with formaldehyde. So we use different preservatives when we have specimens to dissect, for example. So we've gotten rid of formaldehyde in a lot of its worst forms, but yet there are still some levels of formaldehyde in furniture and carpet that are allowed. We can prevent the radon infiltration. Again, I'll talk about that in class tomorrow. Office machines need to be in a well-ventilated area. Heck, these buildings need to be in well-ventilated and protected areas. Use less polluting substitutes for cleaning agents, paints. Keep them out of the house. Keep them in well-ventilated areas so their fumes can't accumulate, for instance, inside a shed, inside a building, places like that, because they will. And then you go in there and you do some kind of work in that shed for an extended period of time, it's going to do damage to you. All right, as far as the office buildings are concerned, look at that. Put a greenhouse on top of your building and run your air through that. Plenty of oxygen in that greenhouse thanks to natural photosynthesis occurring. Increase the intake of outside air. A lot of these larger buildings now are required to flow extra new fresh air into their building. Well, you get the idea. Exhaust hoods and stoves for appliances are a real good idea, especially if they burn natural gas, because natural gas is just like burning wood or coal inside your house. Yes, it's a little cleaner, but it's not completely clean, so that incomplete combustion causes problems. Efficient chimneys, and there are newer, better ways nowadays to connect your wood-burning stove or your fireplace and have a good draft system so that all of the worst stuff goes up the flue and it does not end up coming out of the fireplace into your living room. There's one last thing to talk about in this section, and that is the concept of the sick building syndrome. And I have a story to tell you about that. So 2 stories tomorrow. One about radon and one about sick building syndrome. And I think that's all we have for this section. It is. That's the end of chapter 15, kids. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you tomorrow.